Hello everybody, this is Yoko's Anime Reactions, and yeah, this is going to be kind of weird with how the volumes are set up with this book, and you guys already know which one I'm talking about if you've been keeping track of it. Ascendance of a Bookworm, Volume 2, Part 1. Essentially, I think it goes Volume 1, Part 1, Volume 2, Part 1, Volume 3, Part 1, and then I think it keeps going like that until it gets to a certain point, and then it'll go like Volume 1, Part 2, and it'll just keep building and building like that. I don't know how the heck I'm going to do this in the title, but whatever. Okay. The prologue. Tuli, would you please peel those potatofuls for me? Okay. At her mother's request, Tuli took a seat and readied her knife. They were preparing lunch. While peeling the potato full skin, she glanced at the door that Mine had left through. Apparently she was introducing Lutz to one of their father's co-workers. They left a lot earlier than the planned meeting time of third bell, but regardless, Tuli didn't think that the introduction would go well. She's trying really hard to make this happen, but it's just going to be impossible, right? Shouldn't you have stopped her, Mom? I don't think Lutz would become a traveling merchant, but he needs to learn that for himself. And it's rare for Mine to get this enthusiastic about something, so I don't see the issue. Effa, also peeling potato fells, whatever, shrugged and explained that in the first place she wasn't expecting much from Mine's efforts. Her expression said that she was dead confident that Mine would fail. Ooh, that's harsh. It was only the day before yesterday that Mine learned that introducing a friend to your father's co-worker was the same thing as asking for an introduction to an apprentice work. She had hurriedly prepared and went to the forest yesterday to get Lutz cleaned up. His hair ended up shockingly blonde and silky, but when it came to taking on an apprentice, there were more important things than looks. Tuli really didn't expect that anyone would hire Lutz, through trust in Mine alone. That said, she felt kind of weird seeing Mine work as hard as she had been lately. Her sister hadn't been this hard of a worker a year ago. It feels like Mine isn't... they're starting to figure that out, or starting to get suspicious. It feels like Mine isn't Mine lately. She still gets sick and passes out all the time, but she doesn't cry about things being unfair anymore. Though I guess she does cry about not being able to do things and then gets all upset if someone tries to do them for her. At one point, Tuli's little sister had spent all her time getting mad at her for being healthy and getting to go outside while she was stuck in the house. But that was a thing of the past. Mine was still getting sick, but she was also doing what she wanted to do, challenging the world and getting depressed when she failed. Oh, sweetie, that's just what happens when a child grows up. Babies have to be taken care of, but over time they grow to dislike that and want to take care of themselves. But they aren't prepared to do that yet, so they get upset. You acted the same way when you were turning 3. Effa smiled, remembering the past. Tuli herself didn't remember how she acted all that time ago. She got a little embarrassed at the thought of her trying to take care of herself, failing and getting upset. But there was something about Effa's statement that felt off. Tuli compared herself to Mine and tilted her head and thought, "You said I acted like that while I was turning 3, right? Doesn't that mean Mine's growing up late?" She is, but when you think about how she's physically stunted, well, I suppose it makes sense that emotional growth would be stunted too. Now that she's finally gotten more healthy, she has the room to grow up. It might be difficult for you, Tuli, but please let Mine do as she wishes for now. She'll become more capable over time, more understanding of her limits, and eventually she'll stop pushing herself too far. That reminds me, she was trying to get strong enough to gather and draw water in my place after my baptism. She got really depressed when she couldn't manage it at all. Tuli thought back to Mine's recent behavior. She was asking for all sorts of bizarre things like usual, but she could change on her own, as she could both relieve herself and clean up after herself without any help. Tuli definitely had less of a burden on her shoulders than back when Mine would spend all day throwing tantrums. Gathering was a more complex story. The first day she walked to the forest on her own, she stealthily made clay tablets with Lutz's help, which Faye and his cronies then crushed. She got so mad her eyes flashed like a rainbow. But nowadays she didn't cause any problems at the forest. She was too weak to do much gathering, but when compared to a 3-year-old going to the forest for the first time, that was reasonable. She really can do a lot more than she used to. I hope she'll keep getting more healthy. I can imagine that the interview will fail and she'll come home depressed. When that happens, cheer her up for me. Mine did her best here," said Effa, standing up with her peeled potatofuls. Whatever the heck those are. I'm guessing they're potatoes. Tuli gathered the skins and stood up as well to help prepare the rest of lunch. At the time, she didn't expect in even her wildest dreams that mine had actually paved the way toward being a merchant apprentice, albeit with a few conditions to overcome. Yeah, because she's not had her baptism yet. The road to washi? The road to washi. It was time to make washi, traditional Japanese paper. I was finally in a position where I could make it, or rather in a position where someone else, Lutz, could make it for me. As part of his job even. How wonderful. On the way home from the interview with a merchant, I was practically skipping along the road with excitement. Mentally speaking, I felt like I could jump in the air and spin at least twice before landing like a figure skater. Mine, I get that you're happy, but come on. Don't get too excited. Do you want to catch another fever? How could I not be excited? I mean, we're making paper here. Paper! I can make books of paper. Yes! How could I stay calm with books getting even closer? Lutz, watching me start to actually skip along the road, put his hand on his head and sighed. Mine, alright, we're making paper, but how are we going to do it? I've got no clue myself. Don't we need tools or something? Is this going to work? Calm questions threw a bucket of cold water over my excitement. After returning to reality, I paled at the truth of my situation. I knew how to make washi, definitely. I even had vague recollections of what tools were involved. There was a book I read about disappearing crafts and all that, but I didn't remember the exact details on how to make the tools to make paper. Without these tools, I had no way of making the paper myself. I have to start with making tools. Once again, I know all but the most important things. Hey, Mine, you sure got quiet all of a sudden. Don't tell me that you don't actually know how to make paper. Lutz gave me a really uneasy look as though I hurriedly shook my head. Don't be silly, I definitely know how to make paper. I've been trying to make it for a long time, so long now. But I'm not sure long enough to cut trees or draw water from the well, and I can't even do things like start fires or crush fibers. I needed help, but I couldn't ask others to make paper for me. That'd be too selfish, so you could have just asked me if you needed help that bad. Lutz pursed his lips a bit, looking a bit frustrated. I was glad he was willing to help, but making paper was a lot of hard work. It was on a different level from digging holes or helping carve branches. The thing is, all I can tell you to do is tell you what needs to be done. It's not like before where we worked together to do things. From start to finish, you'll be doing almost all the work to make paper yourself. Are you really okay with that? Duh, of course I am. You think up things, I make them. That's the promise we made, right? Lutz nodded immediately, but I had to make sure he was fine with that promise. It was possible that he had just gotten caught up in the atmosphere of the interview and didn't really think about it before agreeing. So, Lutz, we have to start by making the tools needed for paper. Do you think you can do that? You'll be with me, right? Of course. I'll do everything I can. With that said, I fell into thought. I had to remember what tools were needed before we can make them. While I was at it, I needed to search through my home to see if anything could be replaced with something simpler. That might get Mom mad at me, but I had no other choice given how poor I was. I'll write down the tools we need and start looking for things we can use in place of them. If I can't, we'll have to make them ourselves. First, I want you to find trees that will make good paper. What about the trees in the forest? Well, the thing is, I don't know which trees in the forest will make good paper. I knew which Japanese trees would make good washi, but the trees of this world were alien to me. Let's see. What we want here are trees with long, strong fibers. The fibers also need to be sticky so they'll clump together. We need a lot of fibers from each tree too, but I don't know how to check and see what kind of fibers a tree has. Not to mention that some trees were only good for chopping at certain points in their lifespan. I knew of a tree species that made great paper after 1 year, but then hardened up after 2 years such that its fibers were unusable. The knowledge didn't help me actually look at trees and identify how old they were, though. I really was useless. I mean, I don't know which trees are like that either. Basically, there are probably soft trees and hard trees, but I want young, soft trees. Yeah, they do get harder as the years go on. Any kind of tree was too hard for me to cut, but Lutz had a lot of experience in the forest, and could apparently. Actually, I can. They're pretty different. I know some trees that are really easy to grow. Really? I could only grit my teeth in frustration over my own ignorance of the world born from being a sick shut-in. Only a month had passed since I had worked up the strength to go to the forest. I had never even chopped wood before. It was beyond me to pick wood for something. I'll leave picking the wood to you, Lutz. We'll try out lots of different kinds and find which one works best, so just think of any soft trees you can. Also, I want you to find Tororo? I don't even know what that is. The heck is that? Well, it's like sticky stuff that can help keep the fibers together. I don't actually know if there's any of it around here. Do you know of any trees or, well, fruits even, that have thick and sticky juices? Let's fell into thought. Apparently nothing immediately came to mind. I'll ask someone who knows more about this stuff than me. Okay, I'll try to remember what exactly we need and then write down the steps to make paper. Then I'll think about how to make those tools. Our conversation came to a close right as we reached my place. We're here. Alright, let's get to work. Letz's eyes were gleaming, filled to the brim with motivation. I gave a firm nod and went inside. Welcome back. Don't feel bad, mine. You'll be useful to someone. That's rude. Someone someday. What? Tilly, what's going on? You just have to try harder next time, okay? The moment I went inside, both Mom and Tully started consoling me for some reason. The interview went really well. He had some conditions, but he agreed to potentially hire us. What? The two of them looked extremely shocked. I turned back to them and took out my stone slate as they started talking about celebrating. I had to write down what tools we needed while thinking about how to make washi. I have to get ready for stuff, so... Tests for apprentice work are really serious. Good luck, said Tully supportively. I nodded, readied my stone pen, and began imagining the process of making paper. First, I needed to chop down the trees and plants that would become the core of the paper. Lutz had something like a hatchet so he can cut trees whenever we needed, which meant we didn't need any special tools for that step. Next, generally you would steam the wood to peel off the back outer layer. We needed a steamer. If we had one in the kitchen, I could use that. I checked but didn't find one, which made me realize we hadn't had any steamed food before. It wouldn't be surprising if we didn't have a steamer. I wrote down steamer and pot on the slate. Okay, I am going to try this again. Here's hoping I can, because I tried and I was able to get some of it done, but not very long. Let's see if I can get it done. Here, alright. Oh my god. The steamed wood would be dunked in water and have its outer layer peeled while it was still hot. We would have to do the steaming and peeling by the river, but since we had knives, that step wouldn't be a problem. Next, drying them, leaving them dunked in the river for over a day, and peeling the inner white layer didn't take any particular tools either. A knife would be good enough. Next, the white layer would need to be boiled with ash, softened, and have the impurities removed. In short, we need ash and a pot. We could reuse the pot from the steaming, but getting ash would be more difficult. Mom would never give me any, and I didn't know if the ashes formed from steaming would count. I wrote down ashes. Next, after leaving the boiled white layer dunked in the water for a full day, we needed to wash off the ashes and let it dry under the sun, which would also bleach it. After that, we would take our damaged fibers. We could do all that with our hands, no tools necessary. Next, hit the fibers like crazy until they look like cotton. We would need a mallet or something to land decent blows on the fibers. We could probably make something resembling a mallet out of firewood. I wrote down wood shaped into a rectangle. Next, mix the beaten fibers with water and toro. We would need a bucket or tub to mix everything. After that was done, the pulp mixture needed to be flattened with a suketa, a bamboo screen held in place with a frame. The pulp would end up spread across the screen and dry into paper. Hold on, where was I? Okay, here we go. Into paper. Making a suketa would probably be our biggest hurdle. I wrote down a tub and suketa. Next, take the screen out of the frame and move the filtered paper onto the drying bed. As the name implied, the drying bed was a place to put finished paper to dry. All you had to do was stack the day's worth of paper onto it, and after a full day, the water will have drained out. I wrote down paper stand. Next. After that, put gentle pressure on the paper with weights to squeeze more water out. If you leave the paper pressed for a full day, most of the tororo stickiness will apparently go away. What could we use as weights? We definitely had weights for squeezing out oil, but I didn't know if Lutz could use them. Just in case, I wrote down weights. After pressing the pieces of paper, peel them off the drawing board one by one and put them onto a board. I wrote down flat board. Once the pieces of paper dried under the sun for a bit, we just had to peel them off, and we were done. Now that I think about it, we sure need a lot of things. We needed a steamer, a pot, a mallet, ashes, a tub, a suketa, a drying bed, weights, and a flat board. Not to mention the wood and tororo. I remembered most of the washi making process from pictures and illustrations I had seen, but given that I had never actually made any myself, I couldn't recall the exact details. For example, the best wood to Toro fiber ratio. And that's her imagining everything. Regardless, at some point, I had seen an offbeat celebrity on TV making paper for a variety show. If a celebrity could do it, how could I not? Well, the celebrity had access to modern technology. Taking back to the TV show. You can do it, memory. Actually, that celebrity definitely borrowed all those tools. They didn't make anything themselves. And they had an instruction guide then, too. Ugh. Or instructor guiding them. Sorry. Despite having the knowledge, my real-life experience ended up making postcards in class from the paper used to make milk cartons. That was better than having absolutely zero experience, but it was hardly worthwhile. Anyway, I figured it was worth a shot to try making at least a postcard's worth of paper here. Smaller tools would be easier to make, and it would be faster to experiment with different types of wood if we made smaller sized pieces of paper. Okay, let's try making the steamer first. Chinese cooks often use rounded basket-like steamers, but those would be hard for us to make. Square basket-like steamers, on the other hand, shouldn't be too hard at all. I drew a rough sketch on my slate and showed it to Lutz. Looks pretty simple to make, but do you got any nails? What? Can't you just bend the twigs and fit everything together? What? The problem with making tools, we didn't have the tools to make tools! We could cut wood, but we didn't have nails. In this world, nails were too expensive for kids to get their hands on easily. To make matters worse, even though we had tools to cut wood, we didn't have tools for more precise carving. It'd be great if I could borrow Dad's tools and carve the pieces of wood to slot together like Edo period sashimono, but I didn't have the knowledge or craftsmanship to start to do that. Anyway, if it was simple enough that Lutz could do it after hearing an explanation, it wouldn't be something worthy of needing craftsmanship. Nails were something useful in daily life, and thus they were sold in smitheries that dealt with metal goods. But we had no capital to buy things with. We were doomed from the start. What are we going to do, mine? I'll try talking to Otto about this. He might be willing to pay me in nails for my assistant work. The only thing I could do was go to the one place that wouldn't pay me for my work. A day passed, and I went to the gate and asked Otto about the nails. Mr. Otto, I have a question. How much do nails cost? If you know a cheap place to buy them, please tell me. Hang on. Let me just make sure that this is actually recording. I don't want to mess up. Okay. Sorry. Why nails? You can't even use them, mine. Indeed, I didn't have the muscle to use a hammer. Otto could understand why I wanted ink and pens, but not nails. I shook my head and explained with a sigh. I want to make the tools I need for making paper, but I don't have the tools I need to make those tools. Otto laughed, hitting the table as he did so. It was pretty funny that day after I confidently told Benno that I'd have the paper ready by spring. I would come to Otto saying I couldn't make it. Unfortunately, I had no choice but to make a fool of myself here. I glared at Otto, pouting. He wiped the tears of laughter out of his eyes and shot me a grin. It looked warm on the outside, but it was the dark grin of a merchant. Otto noticed me reflexively putting on my guard, so he gave an actual grin. If you tell me how to make the stuff that turns hair silky, I'll give you all the nails you need. Oh, that's where she gets the nails from. That wasn't a good deal at all. If Otto spilled the beans to Benno, I'd lose one of the cards I had that gave me power. The lessons were simply too great. Losses were simply too great. That information is too valuable for just nails. Judging by Benno's reaction yesterday, I can imagine that stuff would make for a very profitable product. Nice eye. Otto murmured, a little impressed. I shrugged and started thinking as hard as I could. If I lost Otto's support, I'd have nowhere else to go. I wonder why Otto wants to know about the shampoo. Unlike Benno, he's not a merchant. I doubt he'd try selling it on the market. Maybe he wants to earn a favor with Benno? Otto's better groomed than your average guy here, but he doesn't seem the type to care that much about his hair. If anyone wanted the shampoo, it would be a girl. A girl? His wife! If his beloved wife wants the shampoo, it all makes sense. Mr. Otto, I can't tell you how to make it, but I don't mind trading with you. Otto raised an eyebrow. Judging by his interest, he wasn't too caught up in knowing how to make the shampoo specifically. With success in sight, I took another step forward. Okay, I'll teach Mrs. Karina how to use it, and then make her hair all silky for her. I don't mind demonstrating, since just having the stuff isn't enough to do anything with it. Alright, you've got a deal. Otto nodded without it taking even a second to think. I figured that bringing Karina into this would be effective, but I hadn't expected it to go that well. How about you come to my place the next day I have off? We can trade then. That sounds fair. And so it was decided On Otto's next day off, I would take my simple all-in-one shampoo to his place and become a hairstylist, shampoo only. I was relieved to get nails, but at this rate I'd be losing my share of the shampoo. Though, since the shampoo would run out eventually, I guess that Otto would be bargaining with me more in the future. I mean, as long as you can get the ingredients you need to make them, then you should be able to make it, right? I found a way to get nails. For real? That's awesome, mine. I had to trade some simple all-in-one shampoo for it, though, and I don't have much of it left. Will you help me make some today? Yeah, sure. I figured it'd be best to take the opportunity to make a lot of shampoo, so that I would have extra for future bargaining purposes. Marrows will start growing in a bit, but in this season, Rio fruit are the best for this. We gathered Rio fruit in the forest, and Lutz crushed them at my place for their oil. Lutz couldn't use the weights yet either, so he hit them with a hammer. I threw some herbs into the squeezed oil bit by bit. Wow, this stuff's pretty easy to make, huh? The most important part is mixing the right herbs with the right oil. That's why it's okay to trade the finished stuff for what we want, but not how to make it. Be sure not to tell anyone how to make it, okay? No matter what. Why? It's so simple that if you tell someone how to make it once, they'll be able to make it on their own. They won't even trade for it again. Alright, I get it. I put my finished shampoo into a small jar and handed it to Lutz, who blinked in confusion. What? I don't need this. You're the one who got all the stuff together. You can have it. You deserve at least this much for your help, and Mrs. Carla will definitely appreciate it. She was all over you about it, right? Lutz had mentioned how much of a pain his mom had been when I cleaned his hair before the interview. I hadn't seen Carla since then, so she was probably asking Lutz about it constantly. Oh, that's a good point. Thanks, mine. Lutz happily took the shampoo and I smiled at him much like Otto would. Don't tell her how to make it, no matter how hard she gets onto you about it. Give the goods, but not the info. This is practice for the future. A merchant has a lot of things he needs to keep secret, so... Can't I start practicing with something easier? He giggled as he slept over wearily. Still, I didn't expect that nails would end up being this big of an obstacle for us. The road to Washi might be longer than I thought. Yeah, most likely. But it'd be worth it. Invitation to the Otto residence. Several days later, I received an official letter of invitation from Karina through Otto. Isn't a letter of invitation a bit much for a little kid like me? Aren't these usually sent to parents? It'll be up to my mom and dad whether I can even go in the first place, I said, which caused Otto to raise an eyebrow and shake his head. You're the only one in your family who can read properly, remember? And you can't decline this invitation anyway. If you do, your mom and older sister will probably get fired from their jobs. What? Why is that? Apparently, Karina belonged to a wealthy merchant family, and thanks in part to her skills as a seamstress, she was an influential member of the Tailors Guild. After much explanation, I learned that, allegedly, Tully's apprenticeship was like the position of part-time worker. Mom, as a full-time dyer, was like a store manager. And finally, Karina being a higher-up in the guild was like being on the board of directors. In short, status-based societies were scary. If someone above you in status invited you somewhere, there was simply no way you could refuse. Okay, I'll remember that. Incidentally, if this were a summon from Otto rather than Karina, Dad could refuse it thanks to being a higher-ranked soldier. This could get complicated. Plus, I was thinking this would be a good opportunity for you to learn about letters of invitation. I see. Thank you. Otto taught me how to write a response to a letter of invitation which was written on a thin sheet of wood. An invitation from Lady Karina? To you, mine? Why? Otto told her about our simple all-in-one shampoo and she wanted to try it out. My goodness, I can't believe this. Mom fell into a panic the moment she saw the official invitation I came home with. She was panicking so hard I asked if I should turn the summons down, which made her eyes shoot open with anger. Don't be ridiculous. You have to be polite and not offend her. Understood. I'll be careful. Otto was apparently right. The invitation was more of a summons than anything. Mom hurriedly began to fix up my apron. My normal clothing would be too rude to visit Karina with, it seemed. As she did so, she gave me as many warnings as she could think of how to properly respond to a letter of invitation without being rude. I was just going to teach her how to use the shampoo, but for some reason everyone was going crazy about it. Oh, I'm so jealous, mine, and I'm the one who made this stuff too. Can Tully go with me, Mom? Don't even think about it. She wasn't invited. I had thought up the shampoo myself, but Tully was the one actually making it. To me, it made sense for Tully to go as well, but apparently it would be very rude to bring her along uninvited. So no matter how envious Tuli was, she had to stay home. Just like last time, I would be meeting Otto at Third Bell by the plaza. After putting the apron Mom fixed up for me on top of my usual clothing, I headed there with Dad. Inside my usual tote bag was a small jar of shampoo and a comb. When we arrived at the fountain in the plaza, Otto was already there waiting. Then I take full responsibility for your daughter and will ensure she remains safe. Okay, let's go, Mine. Okay, bye, Dad. I waved goodbye to Dad and started walking in the direction of the castle walls with Otto. Otto's place was apparently closer to the inner wall. As rank got higher, the closer you got to the nobles' quarters beyond the wall, I could presume that Otto lived in a fairly high-class area. Mr. Otto, you're living this close to the inner wall, even though you work as a soldier? My pay could never cover this. Karina's family gave us an upper floor of their home. Her elder brother, reluctant to give up his cute little sister, insisted on it. Speaking of which, I did remember hearing at some point that Otto had married into Karina's family rather than vice versa. That made sense. Without the help of his wife's family, a low-ranking soldier could never afford a home in this rich part of the city. I can imagine that Otto, poor as he was, having spent all his life savings on buying citizenship, didn't exactly put Karina's family in the best situation. The further north we went, the more my surroundings and the people within them changed. Clothes ceased being hand-me-downs and began to have extravagant styles with fluttering excess cloth. The stores located on the first floor of buildings changed as well. They grew larger with more employees and a greater number of customers going in and out. More carriages were traveling across the main street, and less of them were being pulled by donkeys. It was shocking to me that the city could change so much within my own walking distance. I had read about status-based societies in books, and I knew what they were like on paper, but the reality was far different from what I had imagined. I looked all over the place while blinking in surprise. Here's the place. I live on the 3rd floor. 3rd floor? Otto lived on the 3rd floor of a 7-story building. It was common for buildings to have a store on the 1st floor, with the owner of the store living on the 2nd floor with their family. The 3rd through 6th floors tended to be rented out, and the top floor often housed lived-in apprentices and workers. Homes got more expensive the closer they were to a well and to the main street. I lived on the 5th floor of a building closer to the gate than anything, which tell you all you need to know about my family's economic status. Since Otto's family was given the floor right above the owner's floor, I could imagine that Otto's wife was the prize daughter of a wealthy company. Well, I'm impressed they let the marriage happen. Consider me surprised. I get the feeling that there's a pretty big status difference between a traveling merchant and a company daughter. I'm home, Karina. Mine's with me. Welcome, Mine. Thank you for coming. I am Karina, Otto's wife. It's nice to meet you, Mrs. Karina. I'm Mine. I owe a lot to Mr. Otto. I was seeing Karina for the first time, and she was shockingly cute. Perhaps the most adorable woman I've ever seen. Her pale cream-colored hair, resembling a full moon beaming with sunlight, was fluffy yet held together in such a way that accentuated the slender nape of her neck. Her eyes were silvery gray, which gave her entire body a sort of pale splendor. Karina defined the phrase ephemeral beauty, and yet, oh God, why are you saying this? Her boobs were huge. Her parts that really stuck out, gave her a perfect hourglass figure, completely with a tight waist. Mr. Otto, you're so shallow. We went to the parlor, and I couldn't help but let out an odd gasp at the beautiful patchwork tapestries hanging from the walls. It was my first time seeing a home with such lively decoration in this world. I could tell from the amount of clothes and scraps of cloth that this room was for negotiating with customers and talking about work. There was something about the decorations that made me feel relaxed. That said, for the home of a wealthy merchant, the place was a lot more plain and simple than I expected. The tables, chairs, and furniture had no designs carved into them, nor were they polished to a shine. They were simple and made of wood. I did remember reading a book that mentioned the homes of northern countries tended to be simple so that they can endure constant use throughout snowed-in winters. Mine, I do appreciate you coming all this way for me. I heard from Otto that you have devised a substance which cleans the hair. I've been quite looking forward to this, said Karina as she poured me some tea. I could tell just from her gentle voice and tone that she was the well-raised daughter of a wealthy family. She had the warm, fluffy atmosphere of a woman whose mere presence provided spiritual healing. I felt an urge to protect her rising within me. I've been looking forward to meeting you too, Karina. Oh God, you're just as beautiful as I heard, and the outfits you have on display here are even more impressive than I had expected.